Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today, we're looking at Ich armer Mensch, Ich armer Sünder. Sorry, the umlaut did not make it over the U in the print. And this translates to I, poor man, I, poor sinner. Now, at first glance, this chorale looks like a contrapuntal nightmare to analyze, where suspension's happening, how do we pull chords out of a texture like this, but it's actually fairly straightforward. I was surprised after analyzing it. Interesting modulation going on here in the A section, and I think we're just going to hop into the analysis and talk about it as we go. We have no key signature, and we start on A minor. We end on A major. There's no funny business in this chorale. We are in the key of A minor to start things off. We have a passing seventh of the bass here before we get F, C, E, and A. And this is an interesting figure here. We have a 7/6 suspension over the bass, which could lead us to think that this is D minor over F, but I think this D is actually a non-chord tone too, and it's actually this F that's our chord tone. But the difference between D minor over F and F major is just one tone. Something that kind of weakens that analysis also is the fact that we have a B introduced at the same time. So 6 or 4/6, I think they're more or less equal to one another in terms of what's going on here. This A is a chord tone. We then have E, G sharp, F, and B. This F's a 9/8 suspension over the bass. This is implying a 5-chord E major. This E is a chord tone, this E is the resolution, this D is a passing seventh, and then we get A minor, A, E, C, and C, which is our tonic triad, and coincidentally where I think we modulate to the key of E minor, it is now our 4-chord. Now we have a very interesting chord here. We have B, D sharp, A, and B. I'm making the argument that this is a 5/7 chord in root position, but it's incomplete. It does not have an F sharp in it. And this G is a resolution, but creates like a G augmented triad as a result, which I think is also an equally fair analysis depending on what you look like or what this looks like to you. But this sounds more dominant to me, even though all the suspensions beforehand, this suspended tone was not a chord tone. That's just what it sounds like to me. And also, after coming from a 4-chord, maybe that has influenced my the way that I hear it. But afterwards, we're just going to continue up the E minor scale. We have C sharp, E, G, and A. That is, I think this G is an accented non-chord tone. It's like a 7/6 suspension, like a diminished 7/6 suspension here over the bass. And that leaves us with C sharp, E, F sharp, and A, which is F sharp minor over E, which coincidentally, actually, I'm going to make an argument that we're moving to the key of not E minor, but E major. And this A is going to be some type of borrowing. Maybe it's E minor, maybe it's E major. I'm just going to make it the key of E for now. This is an F sharp minor 7 flat, just F sharp minor chord, or minor 7 chord over A sharp, which would be a 2/6/5 chord. We know that Bach loves 2/6/5 chords, and we are enclosing on the cadence, right? We could even argue that this is a cadential chord. We then go to D sharp, B, F sharp, and B, which is B major over D sharp. That's 5/6. This F sharp is redundant. And then we get another F sharp, E, B, F sharp, and G, another E major, or E, another E major chord with this F suspended. This time it's an F sharp rather than an F natural though, but still interesting how we're seeing the same relative spelling. This is our tonic triad in major form, but it's kind of interesting blurring the line between minor and major here. I guess we could make the argument that the modulation happens anywhere in this zone here. But I think the most elegant way to analyze it is over this A minor, and we would expect it to go to E minor rather than E major because the distance between A and E, or A minor more specifically, and E on the circle of fifths is very distant. It's like four notches along the circle of fifths. 4 sharps separate the keys. I guess it's a little bit closer if you take a melodic minor, which has F sharp and G sharp. But only one of those is a common tone with E major. One of them is in direct conflict with E, or one of those is in direct conflict with E minor, so it actually has more tones in common. Does it have more tones in common? No, from that argument it has more tones in common with E major than it does with E minor. At least the chromatic tones are more in common with E major. So I think that that's what Bach is playing with here. Or he's just playing with E ambiguously, and there's an argument for both, because ultimately he does cadence on E major. We do have the G sharp here. But yes, we do have a very interesting cadential figure here. We have E major, and we eventually get a second E major after some passing tones. This D is a passing seventh, and then we get E, A, C, and F sharp, which is this C natural versus this C sharp here creates an interesting dichotomy. This would be F sharp minor 7 flat 5 over E, which would be 2, 4, 2, half diminished. This E is kind of like a pedal tone, so this is really more so functioning like just like a regular old 2 chord. Nothing really special, but I'm going to call it a 2-4-2 chord because this is a chord tone, and it does share a bass with the tonic, which is what we cadence on. So what do we call this cadence? Do we say that the cadence goes from 5-6 to 1? Is it an imperfect authentic cadence, or is it a plagal cadence? Because we have a 2 chord. Well, actually, plagal cadence is typically defined as 4 going to 1. Here we have 2 going to 1, and the bass has no movement. So it's a very fascinating cadence. We have seen 2-1 cadences in the past. I feel like plagal is the better way to call it, just because the cadence does arrive on E major again. But depending on whether you feel like the cadence happens here, and this is just like a little tag or a coda, or codetta, I guess, that's up to you. I think I'm going to call it a plagal cadence, though, after this E major chord. Okay, interestingly, when we usually see the dominant as the tonic of the tonic object of the cadence, we usually see this repurposed as a dominant going to the key of the tonic in the next phrase. But here we have an interesting modulation. We actually go to the key of D minor. We have C sharp, E, E, and C sharp, E, E, and G. In the key of E, this is actually really interesting. I had this analyzed as an A7 chord, but with the G natural, I guess we just have a direct modulation to D minor. This C sharp diminished chord. Actually, if we are, hold on one second, I'm going to walk that back. C sharp diminished does exist in the key of E minor. It is melodic minor. We're also arpeggiating an A major triad here, which is why in my notes I said this was an A chord, but the G natural actually confuses things. This is actually turning out to be more complicated to analyze than I had originally thought. I kind of breezed through it in my notes, but I skipped over some important details. So this is a C sharp diminished triad. We could just be, after this note, we could just reverse course and just go back up to E again, like 6, 7, 1. So we can call this a 6 diminished chord. C sharp diminished is the melodic minor harmonization of the E melodic minor scale, but it also happens to be a shared chord with D minor. It is our 7 chord in root position. This D is a passing tone, and then we get A, C sharp, and G, which is our 5-7 chord. So just 2 beats of dominance tonicizing D minor, which is our 4 chord in the, it is our tonic triad in the key of D minor, of course, and it is also our 4 chord in the key of A minor. That's what I was trying to get out. Yeah, this actually is more complicated than I let on. Its complexities match the way that it just looks visually on the page. But afterwards, we have another one of these tones that shares a bass again. We have D, G sharp, B, and E. That's E7 over D. That's 5-4-2. Then we have 3 of the voices moving off the harmonic rhythm. Typically, that means there's a chord, not always, but in this case there is. There's C, A, C, and E. That's A minor in first inversion, which is 1-6. 5-4-2 typically goes to 1-6. And then we have F, B, D, and A, with some more chord tones moving. Now this would, let's finish off this chord before we move ahead. This is B minor 7 flat 5 over F, which is 2, 4, 3, half diminished. And then we have some passing tones here, E, C, E, and A, which is kind of like a passing 1, 6, 4 chord. But it would be a little disingenuous to not include it after having done it here. Typically 2 going to 1 is not very common. We don't usually see it unless there is a subdivision of the harmonic rhythm, like we have 2 going to 1 here. We're even cadencing on 2 going to 1, but typically something to take with a grain of salt is that 2 going to 1 is a cadence that we seldom, or it's a progression that we seldom see on the harmonic rhythm with Bach. So yeah, I'll go ahead and just say that Bach is kind of continuing this this idea of taking the 1 chord and having it be the destination on the offbeat here. So I guess that is a passing 1, 6, 4 chord that takes us to D major, D, D, F sharp, and A. That is our major 4 chord in the key of A minor with a passing 7th in the tenor. We then have E, B, E, and G sharp. That is our 5 chord in the key of A minor, E major. And our perfect authentic cadence ends with a Picardy third, which is very interesting. Typically, we usually get minor cadences here in the middle of the chorale, but it's not unheard of. It's not unprecedented to get a Picardy third in the middle of the chorale as well. It's just uncommon. But this is our tonic triad, A major, which is definitely continuing along with the idea of mode mixture. Are we in the key of A minor or are we in the key of A major? There's definitely some parallelism or some symmetry going on here. Also, where it happens somewhat similarly in proportion to where the modulations occur in each phrase. So looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence not in A minor but C major, and we pretty much modulate straight away. We get an E major chord, E, E, G sharp, and B, which is our 5 chord, and then we get A minor, A, E, A, and C, which I think is our gateway to C major. It is now our 6 chord. This C is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. This F is a non-chord tone, but it becomes a chord tone. On this beat, we have G, F, B, and D. That's G7 in root position, which is 5-7. This F is a chord tone. This E is not a chord tone. This D is a chord tone. This is a very similar figure to what the alto had in the first phrase, which might shed some light on what actually is going on. We do have a 6-7 or 6-5 progression, just like we did at the beginning of this chorale here. So yeah, there definitely is some symmetry between the A and the B section from a harmonic standpoint. We then have E, C, C, and E. That's C major in first inversion, which is 1-6. This G is a chord tone, this D is a passing tone, and this B is a passing 7th, before we get C, E, C, and E, which is, it might be tempting to call this a 1 chord, but with the B flat here, I'm inclined to think that what's actually going on is that this is functioning as a secondary dominant. This is 5 of 4, like a C7 chord, and the B flat is what is giving us the context that might be how it's operating. But we get a very interesting chord after the C7 chord. We have D, F, A, and D, which is D minor in root position. That is a 2 chord. And to put things into context, if we were talking about just these 2 chords in the context of F major, this would be like a 5 chord going to a 6 chord. So this is just a deceptive progression in terms of F major. We've seen secondary dominants lead to deceptive progressions in a handful of cases across the chorales. This E is a passing tone. This F is a non-chord tone. It's also a passing tone, but it's a chord tone, not a non-chord tone. This E is the non-chord tone. This D is a chord tone. And then we get G, G, B, and D. That is G major in root position. That's our 5 chord, passing 7th in the tenor. This G is a chord tone as well. The bass is just leaping down an octave. And then we cadence on C major, C, E, G, and C, which is our tonic triad in root position. All right, closing in on our last phrase, we end the chorale with a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A, or it's more specifically A minor. We're looking for a point on which we modulate. We have C, C, G, and E here. Just some vocal rotation between the tenor and the melody. It's still a 1 chord, so we don't need to analyze it. And then we have a very interesting chord here. We have D, C, F, and D. We could make the argument this is a 2-7 chord like D minor 7, but I think the C is in a 7-6 suspension over the bass, and this is actually D, B, F, and D, which is B diminished over D. That would be 7-6, and I think this is where we're modulating back to the key of A minor. It is now our 2-6 chord. And then we have D sharp, A, F sharp, and C. That's D sharp fully diminished 7th in root position, which is a secondary dominant. That is 7-7 of 5, because D sharp is the leading tone to E, and E is our 5. This G sharp is a neighbor tone. We then have E, E, G sharp, and B, which is our 5 chord, so it resolves the way we would expect. Typically 2 goes to 5, and this is a just an intermediary chord, some chord that bridges the gap. This D is a 7th, still a non-chord tone though. We then have F, A, and C. That is F major in root position, another deceptive progression. This B is a passing tone. I guess you could make the argument that this could be like some type of 2 chord, but I don't think so. I think the predominant chord is here. We have F sharp, A, D sharp, and C. Another one of these fully diminished 7th chords. This is, in this case, 7-6-5 of 5. That on beat 1 and actually gets turned into root position. D sharp, A, F sharp, and C. So some rotation going on here, and we'll just change the figure bass to 7-5-3 to reflect that. We then have E, A, F, and D. This A is a 4-3 suspension over the bass. This F is interesting as well, chromatic descending passing tone. It also kind of functions like a little bit like a suspension, but really it's just a accented non-chord tone, but kind of like a 9-8 over the bass. The E resolves, the G sharp resolves. This is a 5 chord, which is where we would expect our 7 of 5 to go. This E is our chord tone, this D is a passing 7th, and then, this E is also just the bass leaping down an octave before we cadence on A major, A, E, C sharp, and A, which is our tonic triad in root position. And Bach often uses that Picardy third to end his minor chorales. I imagine it's because he wants to leave the audience on a more uplifting note, especially after all this minor music, which typically is associated with melancholy and downtroddenness. But that's going to conclude today's analysis. Very interesting chorale. For all intents and purposes, it was pretty straightforward. We did get some mode mixture in the A section, which made it particularly interesting. You know, are we in E major? Are we in E minor? Are we in A major? Are we in A minor? I think the big picture is that we're really just in the key of E, or we're in the key of A, as the chords can be borrowed pretty seamlessly from in between. Either of the scales, they're more parallel and embedded on top of one another, and typically we see more of like a separation between the two with Bach. He makes it pretty clear, especially in his vocal music, but I think he approached this vocal score a lot more like he does in his instrumental music, with less reserve. Really, the chordal mixture between the different keys, the parallel keys, is not as tame as it typically is, so it was very fascinating to analyze. But that being said, if you're interested in following me along on the journey to analyze all of the chorale harmonizations, I would love to have you along on the journey, and you can do so by subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification icon so you are notified of when my daily upload goes live. This is episode 213. There's like another 220, somewhere around 220 more chorales left in the series, so lots of content. If you want your daily fix of Bach, your daily dose of analysis, you'll find both of those fixes here on my channel. But on that note, thank you so much for watching the video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. You've supported me by doing so. It's really awesome how much the channel has grown. I'm approaching 100 subscribers. I am thrilled. I'm thinking about doing something. Maybe I'll do like a live stream or something. If anyone's interested in that sort of thing, maybe I could prepare a chorale to live stream, or a couple of them maybe, and spend a couple of hours analyzing live and maybe taking questions and input from the chat. That might be very fascinating. But yeah, I'm closing in on 100 subscribers, so be on the lookout for something special. If something special ends up happening, it might not. I don't want to make any promises, but maybe I'll get a wind to take some extra time to do something special. But anyways, again, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.